Alright, Shalom Aleichem. We're going to start the Zera Shimshon, this week's Parashat, with your permission. Parashat Vayelech. We're almost done with this year's Parashiot. A couple more left. Parashat Vayelech. Drush Aleph. I'm sorry. 1 second. Drush Aleph. Says the Zera Shimshon, he brings the Midrash first. Midrash Pele'ah. Following, the Midrash says like this. It brings a pasuk, brings a verse from our Parashat, Devarim 31:2. It says, Ben me'ah be'esim shana anochi hayom. Moshe Rabbeinu says to the people, I am 120 years old today. On that very day. That was the day he was born, that's the day he was going to die. 120 years later. Which date was it? We know it was, the Gemara explains, it was the 7th of Adar. This day I was born, this day I will die. Says the Midrash. That's what it means when it says, it says another verse later on, towards the end of the Torah, 34:8 in the Devarim. It says, no other prophet rose up in Israel like Moshe Rabbeinu. That is the Midrash. The Midrash connects these two verses. That when Moshe says that I'm 120 years old today, and therefore his death day was his birthday, and then it says, no other. The other verse it connects it to is that no other prophet rose up in Israel like Moshe. This is questionable, says the Midrash. How do we explain this? And according to how we can explain it, he says, you can say the following. It says in the Zohar Kadosh Parashat there were many times when Moshe Rabbeinu was ready to give his life up for Am Yisrael throughout their journey in the desert. Many instances. Just look out throughout Sefer Bamidbar and Shemot, Parashat Kitisa, all these other places. When they did the golden calf, when they made all the other sins in the desert, kept complaining to God, Moshe was ready to go in order to save them. Right? He told God, famously, right after the sin of the golden calf, if you don't forgive them, erase me from your book. So he loved them a lot, and he was willing to sacrifice everything for them. Many times, his words weren't accepted. One time, he was ready to give himself up to die. But that time, it was because of his anger. But the one time he's referring to now is the parasha of the mitonanim, the complainers. Right? This is in Parashat, I believe, over there. And it explains, right after they started complaining and they wanted meat. They didn't taste meat for so long, they started complaining about the delicious food they had in Egypt. And Moshe Rabbeinu had a long soliloquy over there, a long speech to God, speaking to God over there. And one of the things he says over there, some very, very direct and harsh things he says, Moshe. One of the things he says, God, he literally said, God, kill me now. Kill me now, I'm ready to go, I can't take these people anymore. Miyad haya asifat shivim zekanim. What happened after that? How did God appease Moshe? Well, he told Moshe, don't worry, you're not going to do this job by yourself. I'm going to gather 70 elders. 70 other elders who will get some prophecy powers that will propagate from you to them. And they're going to help you lead the people. And what happened after that? There were two prophets. Their names were Eldad and Medad. This is all at the end of Parashat Beha'alatucha. Eldad and Medad, they were two prophets who started prophesying. They also received some prophecy from that burst that Hashem transferred. He transferred some of the prophecy from Moshe to them, to the 70 elders, but these Eldad and Medad also received some. There's a whole story in Masechet Sanhedrin that explains the details over this. Towards the end he speaks about it. But Eldad and Medad received some of this prophecy as well, and they said a prophecy. They said a prophecy that the Torah itself records. What was that prophecy? That Moshe Rabbeinu would die. That was their prophecy, that he would die out in the desert. That was before it was a public knowledge. That was before everyone at that point thought that Moshe would lead them into the land. But Eldad and Medad prophesied, they saw a vision that Moshe would not enter the land and Yehoshua would bring them in. And Yehoshua heard this and he got very upset. He went over to Moshe and he told him that they were saying this, and they said, we should execute them. They're committing treason. But Moshe Rabbeinu said, what do you want from me? God gave him this prophecy. God chose who to give prophecy to, and he showed them this vision. That's the famous story over there. But based on this, we might have thought to say, Chas v'shalom, that what? Moshe met b'shvil shekilel et atzmo. We would have thought that when Moshe died at 120 and didn't bring the people into Israel, he died because of his own words, because of his own curse that he brought upon himself when he complained to God about after they started complaining for meat. He said to God these words, Horgeni now, kill me now. We would have thought that his words manifested. He brought his own death upon himself. Right? Because the tzaddik's words have power to create. And if that were true, that would be a disgraceful thing for Moshe. And that's why the Midrash that he started talking about, Midrash Pele'ah, that connected those two verses. It's coming to teach you not to think that. It's coming to teach you that Moshe did not cause his own death from his own words. Why? Because Moshe gives the reason for his death. As it says in the verse, Ben me'ah be'esim shana, I am 120 years today. Bayom ze nolati bayom ze amut. This is the day I was born, and this is the exact day I will die. Shezeu milui yamim shenigza alai me'et ledati. Because this was a special decree that Hashem made upon me from the day I was born, he says. A special decree that my days will be filled up. That's called milu yamim. Right? Tzaddikim die like, many tzaddikim die like this, where they die on their birthday. That means their years and days were filled up, so to speak, completely. And if that happens, it's a sign that he was a tzaddik and that he died on time. He didn't die early, for whatever reason. As we says in Masechet Sotah, over there 13b, that Hashem fills up the days and years of a tzaddik. Like we explained, the reason why Moshe died, he's saying, by saying this verse, Moshe is telling the people, the reason I died is not because I cursed myself chas v'shalom by saying that before to kill me, but rather it's because it's time for me to go, and this is the allotted time that Hashem designated for me. What exactly is this like we explained. The Midrash, after saying this, it brings the next verse and it connects it to that next verse, which is the Zera Shimshon's main question. The next verse is where it says in the Torah that no other prophet rose up on the level of Moshe amongst Israel. That's where it says, no kam b'Yisrael. Amongst Israel, no one rose up like this. This is questionable. What exactly is this verse teaching us? What's the difference? He wants to analyze this verse. It's obvious to us. We see that no one else rose up like Moshe. Why does the Torah have to tell us this? We know from the day Moshe died, no one was on his level of prophecy. If you want to tell me the verse only comes to tell me how great Moshe was and give him this great praise that no one was ever like him, why do I need the verse of the Torah to come tell me this? Don't I know this already? We already know, he says. Who elevated up to the heavens to bring us down the Torah like Moshe? Nobody. So this is an obvious thing. I don't need the Torah to come tell me how great he was. And furthermore, right? We have another place in the Torah where God speaks about prophecy, and he says that when other prophets get a prophecy, I come to them in a dream, or I come to them when they're in an unconscious state. Moshe is not like that, says the Torah. Moshe was straight, face to face. God speaks to him. He was awake when he was conscious, right? Furthermore, he has another. He wants to pick another word in this verse. What is the verse again? Just to repeat it, we're saying Lo kam navi od b'Yisrael ke Moshe. Did not rise any other prophet amongst Israel like Moshe. He says, Kam did not rise. Kam is past tense. If you want to give me a praise of Moshe or some more information, it should be a future tense word. It should be yakum, says the Zera Shimshon, right? Yakum b'lshon atid. It should be that there will never be another person like Moshe. Maybe that would be a better praise, but it didn't say that. It said Kam. No one past tense rose up. Then furthermore, he says, what's the point of the word B'Yisrael in the verse? Why does the verse have to tell me that no one in Israel came up like Moshe? Just say no one came up like Moshe, period. What's the word B'Yisrael teaching me? And he says, there is a famous drasha that the Chachamim explain of this word Beis Yisrael. What does it come to teach us? It comes to teach us a specification, an exclusion. That means only in Israel, specifically in Israel, no one rose up like Moshe. But outside of Israel, other nations, there were other huge prophets that had a very high level of prophecy. Who was that specifically? Bilam, famously, the very impure Bilam, who also had a high level of prophecy, and God did that on purpose in order to level the playing field and in order to give to deter the argument of the Goyim that they would have said, if we had a prophet like Moshe, we would have came to you. They did have a prophet like Moshe, Bilam, and they still didn't come. So that's one way to explain the word Beis Yisrael. But, says Zera Shimshon, he wants to offer another way. What is it? Yesh lomar, you can say, she'hakatuv ba le'ashmi'enu, that the verse is coming to teach us, she'kol hazechut hagadol she'aya lo Moshe, that all the great merit Moshe had, lo haya ela b'shvil Yisrael. It was only on the count and the merit of Am Yisrael. That's the main point he wants. That's the theme of this Zera Shimshon. He wants to say that it's not necessarily that Moshe made Am Yisrael great. It's quite the contrary, it says. It says Yisrael, the people who were leaving, the generation were leaving Egypt. They were on such a high level themselves that they made Moshe great. They are what necessitated Moshe to be there. And that's what he wants to explain here. U'kmo she'amru gives you a few proofs. It says in Masechet Berachot 32a, when Hashem speaks to Moshe after the sin of the golden calf, Hashem says to Moshe, Lech red ki shichet amecha. Go down from the mountain because your nation has made a big sin. Shichet did something destructive. And what does the Gemara say on that verse? The only reason I praised you and I gave you such a high level of authority, says Hashem to Moshe, is because of Am Yisrael. But now that they have sinned and done this terrible sin of the golden calf, why do you need any greatness? Why do you deserve any great level of authority? Which means Moshe's authority and his awesomeness was in direct correlation with the greatness of Am Yisrael. That's what that Gemara is teaching. V'chenu b'Yakut also says in the Yakut Shimoni in the Midrash, al pasuk Amad v'yimoded eretz. In the prophet Habakkuk it says, Hashem stood up and he measured the land. What does that mean? Madad Glesh Baruch Hu kol adorot. Hashem measured all the generations of the world. He weighed them. He looked into them. V'lo matzah dor ra'ui lekabel Torah el dor hamidbar. And he found that the only generation that was proper and appropriate to receive the Torah were the ones that actually received it. Those people that came out of Eretz Yisrael and wandered the desert. They were on such a high level that they deserved to receive the Torah. So again, he's trying to prove the point that it's because of their high level, Moshe got greatness. That's why the verse says that no other nation rose up in Israel like Moshe. Because even though the times of the actual giving the Torah, little by little, drop by drop, started in the times of Abraham Avinu. Like it says in Masechet Avodah Zarah, Shita alfei shnin hava alman. The Gemara says over there, the world is going to be about 6,000 years. History. The main part of history, there's more after that, but the main part of history is 6,000 years. Shnei alefim Torah. The first 2,000 years are called, 2 of the 6,000 are going to be called the times of Torah. Right? Let me give you the whole Gemara over there. It says over here. Right. These 6,000 years are cut up into 3 sections, 2,000 each. Because the first 2,000 years, they're called the time of Tohu. Tohu means chaos, destruction, right? Or disorganization. Because they had no Torah. The Torah wasn't given until the year 2448 from creation. So the first 2,000 years, there was no formal giving of the Torah to a nation. So that's why it's called Tohu, chaos. Shnei Alefim, this next 2,000 years, Shnat Habayim Acharim, was the years of Torah, because that was when the Torah was given. Ve'enam Adayin Hashanayim Re'uyim Limot HaMashiach. And however, those middle 2,000 years are not the times of Mashiach just yet. But the last 2,000 years, that's going to be the time that Mashiach is appropriate to come. So we're still in that last 2,000 years. We're still experiencing that, so we hope Mashiach comes immediately with Zet Hashem. But the point is, says Zera Shimshon, Lo yachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu litna kodem. God could not have given the Torah before that generation of the people who left Egypt, because they left right in that middle 2,000 years. Because the people were not, and the time was not appropriate for it yet. And therefore, because that generation was ready, at that time when it was, in the middle 2,000 years, that's why Moshe was born in that time specifically. Meaning, again, it was the nation, it was the people, it was the appropriate time and people that caused Moshe to come into the world and be born when he was. And therefore, when this whole generation died, right, they got the punishment of wandering the desert for 40 years because of the sin of the spies, and they got wiped out, and their children are the ones who went to Eretz Israel. So since they got wiped out, once they all died, once they were gone, it was appropriate and only fitting, Shi'amut af Moshe, that even Moshe would die, because he only came into the world for them, to lead them and guide them. Once they were gone, Moshe, their partner, also needed to go. That's why it says B'Yisrael in the verse, because Moshe, his whole story is intricately connected with Israel. Furthermore, it says Zera Shimshon, V'zeu she'mashmi'enu hakatuv shel v'lo kam navi. That's what the verse says. No nation, no prophet rose up amongst Israel like Moshe. כדי שלא נאמר שמשה מת בשביל שקילל את עצמו חס ושלום, in order for us to say, for us not to say that Moshe died because he cursed himself, like we said before. אלא כדי להיות עם בני דורו. He rose up because he was the special sent, a person fit to lead that specific generation. Good. I just want to bring one more point here. He wants to just type some loose ends about Eldad and Medad. Very interesting stuff. Those two prophets. It says over here, why did Eldad and Medad, regarding them prophesying and seeing that Moshe would die at that time, was when it happened, which is towards the beginning of their wandering in the desert. How did they see so early that prophecy? Here's what you can say, since these two prophets saw ששרתה רוח הקודש עליהם והיו פחותים הרבה, but their prophecy was on a much more lower level than Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Because again, it was like a propagation, it was like a spark, a blast that came, that God transferred from Moshe to these other prophets. So they only received tiny sparks, but the original high level of prophecy stayed by Moshe. Bavadai, therefore, for sure, haya lehem lomar, they should have said, be'atzmam, they should have taught themselves, ma to'elet lenevu'azu, what's the point of this prophecy, right? Eldad and Medad should have said, does this prophecy even make sense, what we just saw, that Moshe would die before we reach Eretz Israel? If Moshe is a greater prophet than us, uses this wordage of this phrase that the Gemara uses, which means, isn't included in 200, there's 100? Which means if you open up a box and I tell you there's $200 in there, for sure there's going to be $100 in there at least, right? Because within the 200 is 100. So the point is that within Moshe's prophecy is their prophecy. They got prophecy only from him, because God transferred from them. So if they saw something, for sure Moshe would have seen it, and he would have seen it even better and clearer than they saw it, because he's the 200, so to speak, and they're the 100. They're included within him. And if that's the case, ולא תהיה זאת להם לשום כבוד. דבשלמה ה-70 הראשונים יש להם הכבוד להיות נמנים בסנהדרין, אבל אלו השניים נשארו במחנה. Right, these two, Eldad and Medad, they received a lower level prophecy of even the 70 elders, because they weren't included in the 70 elders. The Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin explains that, according to one opinion, the Re'em explains that they were the ones that were actually excluded from the elders. There were 72 possible spots, and Moshe Rabbeinu randomly did a lottery, and he wanted to keep it even amongst all the tribes. There was 12 tribes, so he took 6 people from each tribe. 12 times 6 is 72. He didn't want to disrespect any tribe, so he took 6 even from each tribe. 12 times 6 is 72, and now he has to exclude 2 because God said 70, not 72. So 2 have to be kicked out. How? He did a random lotto. He wrote 72 little papers. On 70 of them he wrote Zaken, meaning elder, that he would be appointed. And on 2 of them he kept it blank. And they all took it randomly, and 2 got left out. And according to the Ra'im, he says that those two were Medad, they got left out. But because they were so humble, they still received sparks of prophecy. Anyway, but nevertheless, their sparks of prophecy were even less than those 70 who were chosen. And that was even less than Moshe Rabbeinu, of course. So therefore, the point is that their prophecy was on a much lower level, and therefore they didn't they didn't view themselves as appropriate to say over the prophecy that they saw of Moshe Rabbeinu dying. And therefore, אותו רוח הקודש בעצמו ששרתה עליהם הודיע שימות משה, ואז יהיו אלו נחשבים ויהיו להם גדולה וכבוד. But by receiving this big prophecy that ended up being a true prophecy that Moshe Rabbeinu would die before they reached the land, that was their honor, so to speak. That was their reward that they got for being so humble that they were the ones that were kicked out, according to the Ra'im. בסדר, כדאמינן בסוף מגילה. Yeah, he brings you a story here at the end of Masechet Megillah that says שרבי יהושע בן קורחה בירך את רבי בשעת פטירתו. Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha was leaving, he was dying, he was on his deathbed. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi came over to get a blessing from him. And the blessing that Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha gave him was Yiratzon shetagia lachatzi yamai. It should be the will of God that you should reach half of my days. Didn't tell him long life, but you should reach half of my days. What does that mean? Amale, Rabbi asked him, you don't want me to reach all your days at least? Why are you giving me such a bracha, such a half cut up bracha? Amale, he answered him, Haba'im harecha, those that come after you, meaning those who are going to inherit you, your sons, right? Because Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he's a president. Remember, he was a president, and he was a monarch, so to speak. His children would inherit his position. He said, what do you want those children that come after you to be? Should they be shepherds of animals only? Meaning, should they just be plain people? You don't want that. And what that means is, again, a lot of explanations, but basically the simple pshat of what it means is that if he gave him a blessing that he should reach all his days, which would be long, long days, that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi should live long days, if that's the case, then his children would end up just being regular people their whole lives, and they would never inherit their father's great position. That's why he says, you should live half my days so that you have some time of your reign left over in Shamayim, right? Because the underlying concept here is that every regime, every leadership group or person or dynasty has an X amount of time in heaven that they're going to be leading. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he had X amount of time that his dynasty would lead. So if he filled up that whole time, then his children after him, after he died, they would be pushed out. But if he lived less time, then the remaining time, his children could inherit and be great people too. That is the what he wants to say over here. ולכן נתבאר אלדד ומדד, נתנבאו אלדד ומדד שמשה ימות והם יהיו נביאים במקומו. And therefore that's the same idea here, that Eldad and Medad prophesied that Moshe would die and then they would take his place. They would be the prophets, amongst some other prophets as well. After Moshe died, just like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, his sons would come over and rule after him. That is what the Zera Shimshon says on this pshat over here. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to do Hazinu next week, and then we have to find time for V'zot Baracha, and that is going to be the year on Zera Shimshon. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to start a new Mefaresh after Simchat Torah, when we start all over the beautiful Torah from Parashat Bereshit. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'Amen.